or visit cardinals.com/magazine.
Here at KSMO Radio, it's now time for our program with Dr. Kyle Utz from the Dent County Veterinary Clinic at 43 North Henderson. He got some sound advice on the care of your pets during this winter season. Dr. Utz?
Hello, this is Kyle Utz with the Dent County Veterinary Clinic. We're at 403 North Anderson Street, old downtown Salem here. I'm just going to check in real quick with a little information for a few minutes here on pet health care issues. And I hope everyone's enjoying a good holiday season, but we thought we'd chat a little bit about some couple of cool weather issues that pets face when it's wintertime out there, but also an update on recent released information on Giardia, which is an intestinal parasite that cats and dogs and other things can get too. People even also can get it. And then also a little update on the newest recommendations from the American Canine Heartworm Society have just been put out, and I was on that teleconference here a week or so ago, and kind of give some updates on that particular parasite that we see in dogs and cats and other species sometimes too. So anyway, to get started with it, just real quickly, a few things on cold weather. It's cold weather's here, and it's going to get probably a little worse before it gets better. Some things on pets that we really kind of are concerned about is different pets handle things differently as far as cold weather. And there's a little quick checklist people can run through to see what is the risk that my pet has for cold weather issues. And the kind of list of things that I think about on those on the cold weather risk of things like hypothermia, where they just get too cold to function very well. Certainly age makes a difference, and as metabolic rate goes down with age, heat production in the body goes down some too, so it's easier to get chilled. Hair coat type is a big thing, and very, very short, thin hair coats like greyhounds and chihuahuas, things that have a very much faster cooling rate than a big long-haired dog like a Chow or a Quaysand or one of those bigger, heavier coated dogs. Animal size matters. The bigger the dog is, the better they handle it, or cat also. The smaller, the faster they cool off. Their surface area, their body proportion to body mass is different, and so they just cool off faster when they're little. And also going back to age, the heat production rate on these old dogs is just lower, so that the heat loss when they get outside is more rapid, and so just your body core temperature drops quicker. Some other things we think about is exposure time, and when a dog's out for 1 or 2 minutes, when it's cold weather, it's just probably not too big a deal, and most dogs do okay. As the exposure gets longer, then your heat loss gets higher, and then you worry about how much heat production is going on to match up with the heat loss. Level of activity also matters, and like people, the more active you are, the less you get cold, and the more sedate you are, or more sedentary, the easier it is to get cold. We also think about wind level. Of course, we know all familiar with wind chill factor, and the wind chill factor is just a matter of it just carries the heat away faster, and so it drives that heat off the body surface at a higher rate, so you just lose heat more quickly. Another thing that gets missed sometimes is moisture level, and if a dog goes out wet, they just cool much faster because heat is transmitted through liquid much faster than it is through a dry surface. So adding all those kind of things up, age, time outside, what type of hair coat, what level of activity, are we wet or dry, and the size of the animal. Those are all things that help a risk level kind of be assessed. And kind of the lowest risk dog is a 1.5 or 2-year-old Chow that's active and hyper on a calm day, where there's not a lot of moisture on him and he's real dry. So those dogs do pretty well even in very cold. In fact, a lot of those dogs prefer it cold. A lot of them like it in the 30s and even 20s sometimes because they just have so much hair coat. The highest risk dog is an older, short-haired dog who's out for a long time, especially if they're moist in a windy environment. Then you get some of your small dogs like and Chihuahuas and those kind of things that get elderly and then get wet and get out in the cold wind. As little as 5 minutes, you can have a problem if it's really cold. And walking around in snow or muddy rain, that wets the body and lets heat go off faster. So, anyway, just a little things to think about. Just kind of keep in mind on cold weather exposure on pets. Cats do pretty well. They tend to go find a shelter somewhere and get up underneath something, or get in a shed, or up underneath the house where they're out of the wind and out of some of the moisture and things. And so they do fairly well in cold, but they can still have troubles. Again, back to those same factors that are involved with dogs, but they can be at risk also sometimes. Switching over now, a little bit of update on Giardia. Not a huge change there, but Giardia, for those who don't know, is an intestinal parasite in many species of animals, and there are a number of different varieties, and they're now calling them assemblages. But there are a number of different assemblages that are present out in the environment. They're all over the place. They tend to do best in stagnant water. And they tend to accumulate even in quiet ponds, slow-moving creeks, that kind of stuff, and even can be in the pools and rivers and things too. One of the old nicknames for it is beaver fever, and the reason for that is that even pioneers and colonists a long time ago knew that when you get in stagnant water, if you happen to drink some of that, you can end up having GI problems, including vomiting, diarrhea, cramps, all that kind of stuff. And in those days, without treatment, it could occasionally lead to death if somebody else had some other things going on. They were sick for other reasons that could kill somebody if there was other things happening and they had comorbidities involved in it. So it is still present today. It is still common today. We see it in quite a few different animals, and it tends to pop up, at random times. But it also seems more so after rainy spells. And the thought is that probably a lot of these things are spread in little puddles, and then animals walk through the puddles and they walk across different places. And birds, in particular, can walk around in a little pond edge and then fly over to another muddy yard somewhere else, and drop it into those puddles in that yard, and then dog goes out there and drinks it, or a cat goes out there and gets it on his feet, and he licks his feet, and down it goes, and then they start the process. Usually a few days later, they start getting sickly. Say again with GI signs mostly. It is there are again many different types. We know that there are a few types that are the most likely to cause symptoms and cause disease, and there are a few types that can go around to people. Although dogs carry those occasionally, not too much, and cats carry them also, but not commonly. Now, the kinds they usually get are what they call host specific or host adapted, to where they do best in one single species. But there are a couple of them that can go species to species and get in trouble. They are more common in young animals than old. Not that old animals are infected less often. They're infected just as often as young animals are, but they've dealt with it before. Most older animals have been exposed over a period of years, and so their level of illness is reduced, and they have more resistance to the sickness from it because they've been through it a number of times in most cases. But we still do see it fairly commonly. Treatments are available. They're not too hard. There's certain medications that work well to help clear it up, and there's some new ones that are actually making it a little bit better for cases that don't go away really easily. There are specialized testing also, because there is an in-house test that we keep and run sometimes when we have a suspicion of that, and it shows up not most of the time, about 80%. 20% of the cases that have it don't show up on the regular test, and you have to send it off to the lab and have it on a different type of test check that's about 98% effective, but it can't be run in an in-house setting. It's a more complicated test that takes bigger machines to do it, and so it's not typically available in-house. So testing, that's how we do that. And treatment-wise, normally, 3 to 6 days, things have improved. And we know that if we cut the numbers cut way down and help the overall health of the bowel, even if there's a few left, animals begin to feel normal, act normal again, and do quite well. There are some animals that you do find Giardia, and the animal is perfectly well, not having any GI signs, and the experts now say that those don't need to treat those probably because they're handling it just fine. They don't need to be treated per se, because whatever they got it from is still out there, and they'll probably just get it back again. But if it's not one of the human types that they can get, then usually leave it alone. Let them just deal with it and be okay. But some animals again have no symptoms of it at all. They can handle it okay. So aside from that, that's kind of some of just a quick little summary on the Giardia update. And the final thing I wanted to go on to was the new recommendations have come out from the American Canine Heartworm Society, and they've changed a few things, but they've also confirmed some of our older things that we knew about. Just in broad strokes, they're a mosquito-transmitted parasite. that is mainly a dog family parasite, but they have been shown up in a number of different species with different responses and different levels of illness in different species because they're not the correct hosts except the dog family, but we do see them show up in other species. And particularly, we're interested in cats because we deal with cats as a household pet quite often. And they have been also, in rare instances, they have been found accidentally in people, although they don't cause heart failure. They don't cause typically a lot of symptoms in people. Being the wrong host, the worms typically travel through a few stages of development, but they usually can't reach the full adult stage in the heart in humans, so they end up dying in the human, and most people never know it. I'm sure I've been infected probably with it plenty of times because I'm out on animals that have it all the time. But the worm never develops to adulthood and never becomes in the heart parasite living in there causing troubles. So it's considered really not a parasite in people, although it's been found accidentally. And usually when they find that it's somebody who's having their chest X-rayed and they find a appearance of a lump in the chest, and if they go in and find that and do a biopsy of it and they find a piece of a dead worm, they think, okay, that's a heartworm. Okay, but the person typically doesn't have symptoms. They have no signs. They're not sick. They don't have any big issues typically with them. And there was a thought for a while that it was found more likely in people that smoke cigarettes. However, what they found out was that they just X-rayed their chest more often, and so they just found them more often there. But it wasn't a higher instance in people that smoked. It was just a more likely to be X-rayed. So, at any rate, back to dogs and cats. We do see it routinely in dogs, and we are, I guess, unfortunately, very near an area that has a dramatic problem with it. Just a couple hours to our southeast, you get down in the Boot Heel of Missouri and along the Mississippi River, and some areas of Louisiana, Texas, they have substantial problems with it. And having practiced in one of those for 18 years, the level down there in the Boot Heel, Missouri is dramatic. We have 2 to 4 or 5 cases per day down there, although it's not as many here. I think mainly because we don't have irrigated farmland here that just creates massive numbers of mosquitoes, so that helps us a little bit. And our level of dogs and coyotes that have it here is a little bit lower infection rate than it is down there. So that is a reason we have some of it here, but not quite as bad as down south of here, or southeast. So as far as the parasite itself, they tend to, if they mature to adulthood in a dog about 6 months after they get infected by a mosquito bite, and that's when symptoms typically may or may not start showing up right away. The heartworms can live 2.5 to 6 years in a dog, and they cause normally problems starting after they've been there for a while, depending on two things: the number of worms the dog has contracted, and they could be as little as 1 worm or as many as I quit counting one time on a dog at 300 worms, and that dog didn't do well, obviously, but that was a massive number in that particular dog. In cats, the worm number tends to be quite lower, much lower. Typically, a 1 or a few little worms, and that's it. Although the cat doesn't tolerate them very well, they don't take them very well. Their numbers typically are much lower. The spread happens after a dog develops adults in the heart, and once they develop adults, the adults begin to reproduce, and they release baby heartworms into the bloodstream, and they travel in the bloodstream over the whole dog's body. And when a mosquito sucks that blood in, they pull in the baby heartworms like that. And once they go into a mosquito, that heartworm will develop through 2 more stages in the mosquito, and then become ready to infect another dog. And the time frame to become infective after they're inside a mosquito, depending on temperature and humidity, may be as fast as 16 to 18 days or as long as 45 to 50 days. And once they've matured correctly, then if a mosquito bites into the dog, those worms then immediately drop onto the skin where that mosquito fed, and then crawl into the hole that the mosquito made when he took the blood meal. And so once they get in, then they begin to migrate and work their way through the body and go through their 2 levels of maturity, and then become young adults in the heart and then become mature adults. The reason we worry about it is most animals that get it, or dogs that get it, end up sick to either a minor or a major degree, and some die from it, and depending on how many they have and how they handle it and how soon they're discovered. We can treat them. Treatment has gotten a lot better over the years than it used to be, and treatment success is higher than it used to be. And the protocol has been kind of made more specific now and more detailed, and it's successful quite often. But expense is kind of high. So there's one reason preventative is probably a better way to go, because it ends up being cheaper in the long run than treating a dog that has heartworms and it takes a few months to treat them. It's not a one-time thing. So the big push they had for our area, and that was speaking to a number of areas in Missouri, was that we have a medium occurrence rate here. We're not super low or super high, but the veterinarian involved as a heartworm specialist said that the best thing we can do is keep the levels low in the dogs in our area, and then each source of spread is minimized. And so for every dog that has it, you can spread it to other dogs nearby. And the single biggest risk of getting an infection of heartworms is having a dog nearby that has them. So prevention is the answer. They do recommend testing each year to make sure they're negative, and then keep them on preventative all the time. And cats the same way. Cats, we can't test them. We don't test the cats because the tests don't work well in cats. But preventative is the only thing we have, because once they get them, we don't treat them because the treatment is as deadly as the worm is. And so we just have to wait for a crisis and then try to treat them in that case. So that's a quick update on heartworms. If you need to get a hold of us and ask more questions, we're at 403 North Henderson Street down in downtown Salem. And if you have any questions, our phone number is 729-6100. That's 729-6100. Have a good day.
That's been Dr. Kyle Oots from the Denton County Veterinary Clinic at 403 North Henderson with his monthly report. We appreciate him coming in and spending about 15 minutes of his time to keep you up to date on how best to take care of your pets. Dr. Kyle Oots from the Denton County Veterinary Clinic, 403 North Henderson, right here in Salem. Keep it right here, KSMO Radio. Got some music from Lionel Richie, Roy Orbison, and Creedence Clearwater Revival coming up on this Thursday afternoon, right here at KSMO Radio, your hometown radio station.
Why is the world's #1 selling brand of chains